mist, you gon' be soaked. So listen up, cause this hair of the dog, what's real, what ain't? Is this the fog or smog? Cause there's a difference when you breathe it in. So don't let the corporate media take you for a spin. This that morning show, they put you in the know. So I hope that you ready, cause all we do is go, go, go. Yeah, come get your info, you gon' be like, whoa. Hair of the dog, we bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Spitting the facts.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Monday. Some places Monday is good, some places Monday is bad, and other places it's just Monday. We have a lot to talk about this morning, and there have been a number of things that have occurred in the endless cycle of unbelievable and strange things, which just happens to be the year 2020, which never seems to end, which I think probably when we go to change the calendars over at the end of the year, it'll just come back. We'll have to wait and see. But this is a special Monday for us here because it just happens to be somebody's birthday. And it's not mine.
Thank you, Andy. It's
Good morning, Carrie.
Yeah, good morning. Yay, happy birthday to me. So thank you everyone who's tuning in this morning to spend my special day with me. We all know that once you get over 25 and your car insurance rates goes down, everything else is downhill from there. But I'm happy to be here. And that whole phrase of may you live in interesting times is apparently not a blessing.
Yes, and can seriously go fuck off.
Right, exactly. So as we are now one day before the election, I am just, oh boy, watching everything come down on social media and the different stories that are coming out, like all of these Trump trains and things that are happening. I get it. Support your candidate. What I don't get is where we're seeing the images of fire trucks and police cars joining these Trump trains. That's illegal. But yeah, law and order, whatever. And the fact that, our taxes pay for that. Okay. Yeah, but as I've said often, and I know it makes people mad, even rape is not illegal if no one will prosecute. So we'll see what happens with some of these enthusiastic supporters, whether you're for Biden or Trump or Joe Jorgensen or Howie Hawkins. How you conduct yourself kind of matters, doesn't it? Maybe. I don't know. So today, by special request, we had I personally had a number of people going, hey, are you going to talk about the Glen Greenwald thing? And I've been watching that go down. For those of you who don't know, Glen Greenwald, this guy has more journalism awards than I think most people active today. I know that Bob Woodward was out there as the pinnacle of journalism, but even he doesn't have as many awards or commendations as Glen Greenwald. This guy is at the forefront of independent journalism with the investigation piece.
He has more awards than the Pope has hats.
I think that is honestly true. And when you look at some of these awards, these are not fluffy awards. Like we know in some journalism and marketing circles, you can pay for consideration for an award. But the awards that Glen has earned through his work are mostly peer review, right? And the guy's got a Pulitzer for the work that he did in investigative journalism, pulling apart stories, particularly under the Bush administration. He's done some under Obama. He's done some under Trump. But apparently none of that matters because, like you said, Andy, orange man bad.
Yep.
So here's what happened. Glen, his resignation from the organization that he helped start using his blog, he resigned. And then what we saw from journalists across the nation was kind of this huge split between those who side with Neera Tanden and Cap, where Glenn should be pilloried, because how dare he write a story that does not reflect absolutely favorably on our candidate. And oh, by the way, he went on Tucker Carlson, which I want to get to that in a minute. But then on the other side, you had people who are with corporate media, are with independent media, go, wait a second, no, Glenn is a professional. And if you don't like some of the things he's writing about, refute his sources, refute his analysis, but don't come after him. And here's the problem. When he writes and he cites his sources and he does the work that he does, then your pushback becomes harder. And I think that is where the Cap Neera Tanden people are struggling, because you can only argue, I don't like you talking about these things, not that you're not accurate or not that your sources aren't credible. So that's what they've done. They've gone after his reputation and tried to say that he is a Trump supporter. And in fact, I'll post the link here. He had a really nice interview on the Rising, a Hill publication, where he told you exactly why he resigned. So I don't want to relitigate or try to talk over his own explanation. So I thought he did it really well. And he himself talked about and I'll post the link, but around the 3-minute mark, he outlines it specifically. He said it has been a slow, gradual progression to muzzle him. And in particular, he said the editors at The Intercept were very sensitive because they were getting blamed for Trump's election in 2016. And that to me is very telling, because as a progressive, how many times have we been told that we were responsible for Hillary's loss and Trump's elevation, when the data has been out that clearly disproves this, when we know that there were more progressives who voted for Hillary than Hillary people who voted for Obama, and likewise in previous elections. We know that all of the data fundamentally disproves this idea. Yet here you have a major publication, The Intercept, had a reputation for being impartial and accurate, actually caving into the bullying that was happening. And Andy and I had the show about vote shaming, and we didn't take it so much from a person-to-person view, although we did touch on it. We talked about the larger narrative and how that vote shaming affects all of democracy. And here you have it under the fourth branch. So what I wanted to do is back up just a little bit and talk about why the fourth branch, where it got its name, why it exists, and what it's supposed to do in the context of Glen Greenwald's resignation, The Intercept, and what we see across the entire political landscape when it comes to independent media and corporate propaganda.
And especially what that means in a society that's so divided like the United States, right? And how it's used as a political weapon as well.
Yeah, and that's exactly what propaganda is intended to do. It's meant to kind of, well, sheepdog you into a line of thinking and not question it. And part of the problem is, at our core, we are still herd animals, HERD. So this is why it's so effective. If you think that your neighbor and the people that you respect, a celebrity, whatever, is following along this line, then you are more comfortable and more likely to also follow in that line. It's really hard to be the first person on the dance floor, and that is what corporate media relies on. That's propaganda, play to that insecurity that everybody actually has. So Andy, our first graphic, let's go back to school on this one.
All right, the first graphic. Okay, we're good to go.
Okay, so this is, I actually took this from a student learning website, and it's got the link on there. But the fourth branch was, it was meant to be kind of a negative, but we've kind of since embraced it. So what this means is in the United States, we have the three branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial. And the fourth branch was unofficially media. It's supposed to be journalism. And back during the FDR era, journalists got the fourth branch as kind of a negative, like the deep state is what we call it now. But what it was intended to do was to call out corruption, no matter where it was found, to accurately report on events, no matter what the journalists or publications' particular leanings were. And it was supposed to serve a purpose, right? So if you lived in an area and you had to vote on an issue, somebody had to give you the information that you needed, right? So if I am out there as a politician advocating for a flat tax, and then a journalist writes a story and says, I'm a multimillionaire and I'm stand to lose money by doing a graduated tax, then you as a voter have the opportunity to weigh the benefit of what I'm saying. Is it credible? Is it not? And you can make the decision for yourself. This is the role of what journalism is supposed to be. Well, what's happened? What's happened is kind of an interesting slow progression, right? You always have had some type of propaganda all throughout history. We remember going back to look at Abraham Lincoln's election and how the opposition had painted him, literally called him a gorilla and said he was ugly and all of these sorts of things. That's propaganda, and that has always existed. Well, when we had the rise of television news and Tom Brokaw, you had a certain level of trust because Tom was not going to lie to you. All of these journalists you knew were going to say something that was factual and credible, and you could make a decision for yourself. Well, we've gone away from that and we've gone into corporate media, and part of this shift is because of the internet itself, right? Print newspaper has gone downhill, so they can't sell ads for print newspaper as much as they could online. And then with that, we've got the advent of these paywalls, which we at DLF will never do a paywall. And part of the reason for that is, like, my local newspaper, it was a Shaw Media publication. When you had important stories come out that I, as a citizen, needed access to, I would hit a paywall, right? And I recognize that journalists need to get paid. Journalists need to do this as a full-time gig. So what do? Do you pay the subscription, or is there supposed to be some level of access to information that I, as a constituent, as a community member, as a voter, have a right to? And this is where we find ourselves now, right? So I'm going to post the links real quick here so you can follow along with what we're talking about. And then I thought what was most telling about Glen's particular piece was that, oh, hey, happy birthday. Thank you. Hi, Don. Hi, Shanda Lee and Mike Toller. Good morning. Thank you so much for the birthday wishes. I appreciate you. And thanks for tuning in. So this morning, I wanted to talk a little bit about Glen's comments. So I posted the link to the interview on the Hill. And again, at about the 3-minute mark, you'll see that. But he recently had a tweet that is consistent with the way that he has always spoken about politics. And this I thought was very telling, as it kind of dovetailed nicely into his reason for resigning. So, Andy, when you get a moment, put up that tweet, please.
It is there.
Perfect. So there's a link in the chat menu, so you can go out and look at it. But what he was saying is something that I personally agree with. He was talking about all the Biden supporters, in particular, all the progressives who have jumped online and fallen in line with the Biden campaign, which absolutely, I get it. But he was kind of reminding them, hey, when this is done and the dust clears, have reasonable expectations, right? So you have Biden, who is right of center, whose campaign has openly courted Republicans, who has pushed aside and labeled progressive socialists over and over and over, like the dreaded S word, while he is, getting the benefit of public monies for his own benefit. They all do in Congress. So what Glenn is doing here is reminding people that when the dust clears, they don't have to listen to you. They are not going to listen to you, and you are not part of that club, right? It goes back to the George Carlin, it's a big club and you ain't in it.
Absolutely.
Right. So here's Glenn saying the same thing. And what I thought was interesting is when you go through the rebuttal comments, there's a lot of progressives that I recognize there, those accounts, and they are going after him because you cannot say anything even remotely negative right now because we're so terrified that Orange Man bad will be reelected that we ourselves cannot have a reasonable conversation.
And traffic jams.
There's that. So when you go to Glenn's reasoning and he talks about the Intercept being bullied and silenced and curtailed in what they can do because they were reporting things that were less than positive. And then you have a bunch of progressives or leftists, liberals, modeling that same behavior. We are quite literally creating the totalitarianism we are supposed to be fighting against. And this is what I see. Right. So you remember the whole thing about the Bernie bros. The Bernie bros hurt my feelings. Right. It's the same thing, but when you start doing it to journalists, now you are cutting off your nose to spite your face. Right. So as a journalist, you're already being targeted. You go out to cover a story, you might be shot, you might be arrested. All of these things are happening. And now the people on the left are also telling you what you can and cannot say. Do we not see that as a problem? Right?
And it's all based on what people's agenda is, right? It's got to the point in the United States now that we see in society that I am a team member of this team. If there is a narrative that is negative about my team, I will, because of my own agenda, I will deny. It doesn't matter if it's true or false. Mm-hmm. But if it goes counter to my end game or my end goal, then that's the way I'm going to play it. And that's what's really sad about all of this. And the biggest takeaway from the Glen Greenwald incident that I saw was the absolute disdain that people on the quote unquote left had said because of Glenn going on Fox and talking to Tucker Carlson, right? And how dare he talk to a member of the other team? Like, oh my goodness, who does he think? He must be a Trumper, right? And that's
wait a second. Didn't Bernie Sanders go on Fox News? Didn't we applaud Bernie Sanders going on Joe Rogan, who's an independent? And then he did a town hall on Fox News, and we thought it was a great thing. And personally, if I'm an advisor to the next left-leaning president, whether it's Biden or someone else down the road, just as arbitrary, my best advice to them is every morning you get on the phone and you call into Fox News every morning. And the reason for that is because of the division in the narrative. I was talking to some neighbors who are MAGA folks, and they had no idea that Wall Street had been given trillions per day. They were confusing it with the CARES Act because they never got that information. They had no idea that the first payouts in magnitude larger than what people got, small businesses got, went to Wall Street. They're not getting that information. That is the reason why Glen Glenn to Tucker, and he talked about it. And that is the reason why Bernie Sanders did a town hall on Fox News. And what happened after Bernie Sanders' town hall? You had the Nearitandans talking about, oh, look at him. He's in it for, he's against us. Don't fall for those kind of tricks.
If
right?
you're in a situation where you have a certain ideal and you want to convince people that you're right, why are you speaking to the choir? Right? You have to talk to the people that disagree with you in order to change your mind.
Well, that's exactly right. And I remember doing Medicare for All town halls in my Trump country district. And I would have some left-leaning people who kind of knew what Medicare for All was about. But then I had quite a number of people who were there and mad because they thought they knew what the program was. And as I walked them through it, patiently answered their questions, even on a personal level, by the time we were done, they were like, this is nothing like they said it was. This is absolutely nothing at all like I heard it was. This is an awesome program, right? So we have so many of these examples where one side of the aisle is not getting the same information. And then when it came to a story about Biden and Hunter Biden and Burisma and all of these other things, that's when you had the left turning into blue MAGA saying, no, we will not talk about these sort of things. Why not? Why would we not?
Yes, and that's very telling. And I've said this a number of times. I said, replace Hunter Biden with Eric Trump Jr. or Donald Trump Jr. or Eric Trump or Ivanka, right? And watch the mainstream media lose their shit and even forget there's an election coming.
Oh, and that's exactly right. And this is a situation we find ourselves in. I think as an American voter, it's demoralizing, absolutely demoralizing, because I am being told by those people who say that they're champions of freedom not to say anything, right? And even, my brothers and sisters in the progressive movement, I'm being told not to say anything, right? And this to me is more terrifying than I know what Trump's going to do. I know what he's about. I know what he's trying to do. But if I move forward to challenge that, I got to have something behind me that I can be assured of. And the behavior of corporate media and all of these things is not reassuring to me. I feel like no matter what choice I make, we are heading right down that wrong path.
And people are shell-shocked, right? They're being inundated with false information from all sides and trying to, in a time where they're, trying to survive a pandemic that's, apparently being denied by the White House and being deathly afraid to go outside because of the numbers that are happening, and being inundated by all sides by, favorable information to the people delivering that information. People's minds are going numb because they don't know what to believe anymore. They get to a point where they just think everyone's lying to them, and they shut down. And that's why you have such a huge block of people in the United States that don't feel there's any point in going out and voting, right? That's why the biggest block of voters in the United States don't vote. And it's scary as hell. And it's a situation that we have to realize occurs. And the people that call themselves progressive have to come to realize that you have to get to a point where you can cut through that white noise of information and band together and try to make good changes and stop dealing with all of this crap that you're being bombarded with. And that's not an easy thing to do.
No, especially when we don't have the coaching and understanding and frankly, leadership to help us through that, right? So real quick, I want to get to some of the comments that are coming in. And for those of you who are just tuning in, Andy and I are always live. So we see the comments, particularly on our Facebook page. If you type a comment, we'll see it. So thank you for joining this morning. But real quick, Don says, isn't it fear-based and time limited to the election? And I would agree with that. I think that as this has gone on and, the October surprises have come out and all of these sort of things, it is meant to ratchet up the stress level, right? Because what motivates people to go and vote, even if you weren't going to vote, it's fear. And any political operative will tell you this. All the messaging goes to, the world is going to end. And here's this policy, or here's this position, or here's this photo, or these things are so horrifically bad. If you don't vote, then you are responsible for all the puppies and kittens dying. That is a tactic that politicos use all the time. So you're going to see that. Obviously, the closer you get to election, and then, of course, election day is tomorrow. If you don't go and vote, you hate your family, and you need to do that. So, yeah, that there is a structure to it.
Yeah, and but we've also seen that that's how the narrative from both parties to say, listen, what you have to do is your only power is to vote, right? You have to go out there. If you want real change, go out and vote. And what we've seen throughout history is that change doesn't come about in the electoral process. It never does. You haven't had a choice to make any real change in the United States for the last 4.5 decades, right? It's the ground movement. It's the activism. It's the grassroots stuff that actually drives change, right? So the fact that, and as a Canadian looking at the system, right, like my life gets so much easier as soon as your election comes to an end. Unfortunately, because of the way it's going to roll out this year, it may never come to an end. But that's besides the point. But like these people that are in the Biden camp, that were Bernie people, right, that consider themselves progressives, and for whatever reason, they justify orange man bad, gotta vote Democrat, blah, 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 whatever their reasoning is, what's going to fundamentally change? And, as someone that tries to be objective about the entire situation and my knowledge set, I can't see anything changing really, except less tweets.
But less tweets. And actually, Mike put in a comment here that I think speaks to that. And he says, most of the time you cannot reason someone out of a position they didn't reason themselves into. And I think those are wise words, right? So if I have been in some way, shape, or form indoctrinated, either through fear or listening to, Rachel Maddow is fantastic for this, for sheepdogging you into a corporate position that is against your better interests. And I have seen a full wave of moderate Republicans tune into Rachel Maddow, and she's doing a wonderful, phenomenal job keeping them in line with that corporate narrative. They did not reason themselves into it, but you are what you eat, right? You consume corporate media, then you're going to parrot back these kind of talking points. And we see that quite often. And I think, Andy, to your point, that's what we're seeing with progressives, people who were so staunch on these policies and enthusiastic about not me, us, now going, well, okay, some of us can die, and that's okay, but we got to have that happen, or we're all going to die under Orange Man bad.
Right.
And it's interesting that it didn't take that long to get from one position to another.
If you can convince the people in the society that your opposition is always just slightly worse than what you have, you can control that narrative forever and have people follow your lead through ad infinitum, right? If you always are choosing the lesser of two evils. You're always choosing evil. And, you know, it's tough, and I understand that. And I'm quite frankly, I'm glad I'm not American, and not because I think it's bad to be American, but it's because I don't really even know. I haven't had to make a decision. If I was, how I would justify who I would vote for, because of the different angles that I approach that at. Um, it's frightening, and I, as a person that has a lot of empathy for my fellow brothers and sisters anywhere in the world, that wants to raise all boats of society and create a just society for all people everywhere. you know we've got you know uh, our black brothers and sisters that are even part of our organization here, and they're trying to uh, come to terms with a with Biden and that kind of thing, but their decision making process is completely different. And it's we understand what it's like with the Black Lives Matter movement, and that society is dangerous in the United States for persons of color, and that's a whole different narrative that people like you and I don't have to deal with, right? So I get that. I understand, right? So it's how people come to justify where they are and what they do. But personally, I see on the horizon what could be, based on what's happened and how the neoliberal establishment just keeps the same old, the status quo. And that's the horrible, frightening thing for me. And how do you change that? How do you fix that? And we were going to have to come to terms with this because we're running out of time, right?
Oh, we quite literally are running out of time, but that's why we do what we do. This is why we get up, go sleep and do it, because if we're able to educate just one person on how federal appropriations works and how money actually works and how these policies actually develop from X, Y, and Z, and looking behind the scenes at how we got here, then maybe we can get there. And I'm starting to see that, in my relocation and talking to people here, talking to Republicans who sound like progressives, was reassuring to me, because I was getting to a point where I was like, why bother, right? Who's paying attention? So getting back to how we got here, let's take a look at journalists and journalism and media outlets to show you how we got here. So Andy, this would be the Neiman Lab study. And yes. I thought this was interesting because this is an independent group that does these critical reports and investigative things. So what they did was they published a report about media across various countries, US included, and is very telling because follow the money. And in politics, follow the money. If you have an organization, a charity, or whatever, follow the money. And the same thing is true when it comes to media outlets. And this is not just corporate media. This is all independent, right-wing, left-leaning, whatever, follow the money. So we did this really nice study about, who is it? The gay frogs guy. Dang it. Why is his name? I didn't sleep. So, well, his whole stick is these conspiracy theories and right-wing narratives and all of this sort of thing. But his real model is $25 million in supplements. That's what he earns his money off of, not necessarily the news. So you come for the conspiracy theory and then buy his supplements, and that's how he makes his money, right? So follow the money to figure out how things are going to go. And I think that this study is very telling when it comes to those paywalls and what they found, because you still got to pay people. So we've gone away from quality. We've gone away from integrity. We've gone away from the reporting. And what they're relying on is the old school Tom Brokaw mentality. If I see it in Polish, if I see it in a newsroom, if I see it in the New York Times or the LA Times or whatever, it's credible and I can believe it because that's what I'm used to, right?
And
So
that's
I
what
think
people makes them feel better, right? It's easier to live your life thinking that the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times isn't lying to you or isn't trying to drive a narrative to you, and you have your back. They have your back, and everything's good and sunshiny and rosy, right?
okay, thank you, Mike. Alex Jones, that's who it was. And he posted a link on our Facebook page to the song about gay frogs. So do not click that link. But thank you, Mike. Yeah, that's who it is, Alex Jones. So I did a story a couple months ago when I was talking about Medicare for all, and I think I did it for Real Progressives. It may still be up there, but it was this point where the Journal of American Medicine did a study in 2016 about why there's so much pushback on universal health care. And what they found was $200 billion in ad revenue from big pharma and insurance companies to these major networks, push those networks to be negative towards universal health care. So this is one of those clear examples where if you follow the money, then the narrative makes sense, right? So of course, Rachel is not going to talk about Medicare for all. She's going to use the S word, socialism, and neglect to tell you that you're already paying for every congressman, every member of congressman, every federal employee, every state elected in your state and in other states, and that comes out of your pocket. But we won't talk about that. We'll talk about you pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. And oh, by the way, Rachel makes millions to extend that narrative. So the exact same thing is happening, and we can see it in this particular chart about paywalls and where the fourth branch went. Well, the fourth branch now is hiding behind a paywall. So of course, you're not going to get necessarily an objective view on what's going on. So you still have to work. You still have to earn a living. You may be teaching your kids at home. What the hell do you do? Right? So this is part of the problem. And then as I was digging into this story, I found something that as a journalist, I went, oh, ooh, shiny. And then I stopped myself. I was so tempted when I found this. Google is now using their programming, their algorithms, their AI to curate content, data, and analysis for journalists. And this is something that initially I went, oh, cool, data aggregated. And I went, wait a second. How do I know where this data is coming from? How do I know that this data is impartial? Because all I need to do is look at other headlines that talk about Google being in trouble for manipulating their algorithms and sabotaging left-leaning media. Left independent media is being sabotaged by Google's algorithms. So when they're curating data, is it data that I want? And when they're rolling this out to all of these journalists, what are we going to see now? So it goes back to the movie Idiocracy, which is, I believe, the timeline that we're living in now, where you can get your legal degree from Costco and your journalistic story and editorial review from Costco. It's all right there under Google. So, Andy, I don't know if I gave you an image for this one or just a link. No, I don't think I did. So anyway, if somebody wants to, okay. So Integrity says that I should give you a link to it, and I will find it and post that in here. But let me see if I've got it. Oh, here it is. Google releases tools for journalists. So I will go ahead and post this now because we're talking about integrity and I have to live the brand. So as much
Releasing tools for
as,
journalists. We do the thinking for you.
right? As much as I hate to do so, here it is. So Google's tools for journalists. And I got to tell you, like I said, it was shiny and neat. And I for a second there, I was like, I'm going to go back to it. It's still in beta. But yeah, it would make my life so much easier if Google was acting like my review staff to pull information for me. If I didn't have to do it, if I didn't have to wade through local municipal codes and backgrounds and all of these things, it would make it so much easier for me. I would shave 10 hours off of each article I write. However, bad data in, bad data out.
Absolutely.
If they're making assumptions for me so that I write my narrative in the way they want me to, have I actually done anything?
This
Or
data has been approved by Neurocandid.
right. Right. So this is yet another step in the trend that I think we need to be mindful of, right? So even in this casual environment where Andy and I are just, checking it up and talking about topics, we cite our sources. And here they are. Go make your decision. And we absolutely invite you to tell us where we're wrong. Let's have a conversation, a civil discourse, right? It's really hard to do that if everybody's marching to the same drum in corporate narrative run media. Then we call that propaganda and brainwashing.
Yeah.
So
And we've gotten lazy too, right? It's easy to just click like and share, right? It's easy to just click like and retweet something that fits our narrative without actually, looking at the sources and verifying authenticity, right? I've seen that. That's probably the biggest thing that we see on these platforms. And once you come to an understanding that places like Facebook and Twitter and Google are all corporate owned, have their own agendas, what do you think you're going to see most? Right? We had when COVID-19 first hit the North America and in the beginning of March, people were trying to get information out there and how to stay safe and with the stuff that we did with Dr. Burdett and everything around that, I was getting pushback from Facebook for posting things you shouldn't and shouldn't do about COVID, right? And that's the world, and unfortunately, those are the places as progressives on the left we have to live because there's nowhere else to go.
mm-hmm. That's true. And I had a funny moment where I was moderating another Facebook group, and the alert came out that somebody had posted a news article with fake news in it, and I went and looked, and it was the USA Today. I was like, really? So Facebook's right-leaning fact checkers don't like the USA Today now. Okay, now we've come to a tipping point. And I think that is the bigger story about Glen Greenwald and his resignation, and not just Glen Greenwald and journalists, but where we are as a people in this country, particularly when it is so easy to see even progressives, diehard progressives, flip the script and push back and in some cases harass, bully, and do other things so that we aren't getting the full view out there. So it's up to us as individuals to decide, do you want to hear only those things that you want to hear, or do you want to deal with the truth? So this is how I wanted to have the discussion about what's going on in the larger media narrative with Greenwald, The Intercept, corporate media. They are only doing what we allow them to do. And by allow, I mean, when you go out and patronize and consume these media sources, you are giving them encouragement to continue to do so. That's through clicks, that's through traffic, that's through all of these things. So where do we go from here? It's up to the individual. Obviously, Andy and I are committed to, and not just Andy and I, everyone else here, we're committed to being objective with that center progressive policy, and making sure that you don't have to agree with me, but let's at least have a credible discussion on these topics based on fact. So yeah, that's kind of my thing. And then just one, before we get out of here, one quick plug. It is my birthday today. So if you learn something from these conversations with Andy and I, or the great advice that you get from Brandon, or the thought-provoking pieces that Rome is putting out, all of these things, if you appreciate the work that we're doing, then you can support us, because we will never do a paywall. We're not doing AdSense. We're not doing any of those restrictive pieces on our website, on all of our social channel. We rely completely on our team members here and the patrons that we have. So $1 a month is not a lot, and you could help support us through our Patreon. If not your thing, I would ask you then to consider this charity that I've got an interview coming out, and hope to get that out on Veterans Day, because it is this gentleman who's doing something amazing, and his team, for veterans who are nearing suicide, have suicide ideation, having a really hard time acclimating. They're homeless. They went off to serve their country and come back to deal with the same things that we're dealing with, and they don't recognize who we are, right? They went off into such circumstances, risking life and limb. They're focused on the things that are super important, and they come back to us talking about the Kardashians. That's mind-blowing, right? I cannot deal with it. So he helps reacclimate them, helps give them purpose, help give them a new mission in green sustainability, because time is running out. So if you're a warrior, you need a new mission and a new focus. Is giving them one. So you're concerned about environment, climate change, all of these things, or you're concerned about veterans and homelessness and suicide, this charity is for you. So I posted that in the links. It's called Veterans Off Grid. And it's what he's doing will affect the entire rest of the country because of the model that he has in place now. So that story will be coming out, and I hope to tell it effectively so that you get an understanding of what he's doing. So that's my spiel. What you got, Andy?
Well, I just want to wrap up we've got this American pretend election tomorrow, so people have to go out and vote. But whichever way you decide and how you justify which way your vote's going to go, that's the epitome of a democracy, right? Your voice, your vote, however you justified that decision. Just go out and do it. Just make sure. But if you consider yourself a progressive, you need to realize that the current choices that you have in the duopoly are not going to fundamentally change anything without pushing, without continuing to do the activism and to scream and yell into the cacophony of voices out there. We can't stop, because the people that gave you Trump are the people that are telling you have to get rid of Trump. And that's where we have to go with that. You have to stay angry, you have to stay vocal, and we've got to make changes, or we're sealing our fate as a species on this planet. There's really no other way to look at it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I couldn't agree with you more. And this is why I may not agree with you politically. There are some things where I'm definitely going to push back, but I'm never going to fight somebody who works for a living, who's disabled, who is in the same boat as I am, because I do recognize, and I would hope that other people are starting to see it too. It is a big club and we're not in it, and we are the collateral damage in this greater plan. And so this is why I think we need to do a better job of taking care of each other, and pulling people back from the abyss of fascism, pulling them back from corporatism, from all of these isms that are affecting us, particularly with the Black Lives Matter and immigration reform, all of these things. Because it's just us at the end of the day. That's it. It's
Absolutely.
us.
And Malcolm X said, you can't stick the knife in my back 9 inches and then pull it back out 6 inches and call that progress.
That's exactly right. Excellent. And on that, I think we're out of here. I'm actually getting a haircut today. I'm going to mask up, gloves, everything.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Is that your birthday present?
That is my birthday present. So, yeah, I take extra precautions, but I actually almost smothered myself in my sleep. Got so much hair going on. It's time. So on that note, thank you everybody for spending the day with me, and I appreciate it on my birthday. Thank you, Andy, for all your hard work. Always appreciate it.
You too, sweet. All right. We're going to get the hell out of here. Enjoy your day, people. Take care of yourselves.
Yes, the Urbana City Council.
We bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Spitting the facts, how it's supposed to be. Happy the dog, we keeping it G.